Adjourn.
Good morning. I would like to call this August 1st meeting of the Planning and Advisory Commission to order. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before we get started, I would like to ask those in the audience and also my fellow commissioners, please all turn your cell phones off or make sure that they are silenced since we are recording this live. First, I want to remind those in the audience and those watching on television that this is the first hearing of any rezoning, text change, or special exception requests that have been brought before us today. We will first hear the reading of the staff report for the case by the planning staff, and then we will ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against the request, and then the commissioners will have any needed discussion in the case. Once a motion is made and seconded by the commission, a vote will take place and a recommendation will be rendered. The case will go back to the Planning and Advisory Commission, or back to the Planning Department, excuse me, for their independent recommendation. And if there is a favorable recommendation, it is given, then the case will be forwarded to the City Council with 2 independent recommendations. If the Planning Department makes a recommendation for denial, the applicant will have 10 days from the receipt of a letter stating the denial to notify the Clerk of Council that they are requesting to be placed on the City Council's agenda. The City Council of Columbus will hold a public meeting, which is called the first reading, and the said council shall consider the case. They'll review PAC and the Planning Department recommendations, and they'll hear any discussion regarding the matter. And then council will make a final decision at a second public meeting called the second reading. We do have minutes that were sent out to the commissioners from our prior July 18th meeting. Commissioners, I'm hoping you've had some time to take a look at these minutes. We can submit these as accepted unless any of you have any changes that need to be made. Anybody? No. So we will submit these as accepted. Thank you for those. So that actually brings us to our very first case this morning. We only have 2 on the agenda. The first one is REZN-06-18-1169. This is a request to rezone 40 acres of land located at 9056 Veterans Parkway. The current zoning is RE1, which is Residential Estate 1. The proposed zoning is RO, Residential Office. The proposed use is a life plan community. Joel Womack is the applicant, and this property is located in Council District 6, Allen. Mr. Renfro, if you'll read us the staff report.
Yes, ma'am. General land use is inconsistent for planning area A. The current land use designation is vacant undeveloped. Future is single family. Is it compatible with the existing land uses? Yes. Environmental impacts. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of site development permit if a permit is required. The property is served by all city services, no traffic impact. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. There will be no school impact. The buffer requirements, the site shall include a Category C buffer along all property lines bordered by the RO zoning district. The 3 options under Category C are: number 1, 20 feet with a certain amount of canopy trees, understory trees, shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet. Number 2, 10 feet with a certain amount of shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet, and a wood fence or masonry wall. And number 3, 30 feet undisturbed natural buffer. There was no response from Fort Benning recommendation or the DRI recommendation. We sent out 129 notifications. 1 to a half mile of the subject properties were notified of the zoning request. The Planning Department received 1 call opposing regarding the rezoning. There's no additional information.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the staff report? All right, if the applicant will please come forward and state your name and address and then give us a brief overview.
Joel Womack, EMC Engineering, address 3575 Macon Road, Suite 15. Like I said, the plan is the planned living assistance. Right now they're planning for 24 independent cottages kind of spread out throughout the 40 acres, and then one large building that will facilitate 100 independent living apartments with 102 skilled nursing beds, as well as 48 apartments. The idea is it to be for a retirement facility, to be there independently, and as they progress in their life, to have that full service there. So in theory, once they come there, they don't have to worry about moving to another residency or something along those lines when time catches up.
Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Kenner.
This is a question just for information.
Yes, sir.
Okay, like with hospitals, I think whoever the regulatory agency is, the hospital requires some sort of certificate of need before they can build new beds for a hospital. Is there some sort of a regulatory agency that you have to deal with that establishes or agrees with a certificate of need or anything like that?
No, sir, not necessarily the need, but the client, like I said, they've done this throughout the whole nation, and they kind of target areas that do not have this facility there and try and go ahead and put that facility where there is a need, rather than trying to go through that.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners, for the applicant? Mr. Bollinger?
And I don't know whether this goes to you or the planning, but it said there's no traffic impact. How could that possibly be true?
With the type of development that he's going to be bringing in, most of it being elderly people, there's just the amount of cars generated is going to be very minimum.
And also, I've got a question that may answer yours as well. When you say no traffic impact, does that really mean not enough traffic impact to move it from one category to another of road?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So there may be some traffic impact.
There may be some, but it's going to stay. If it's a Category C, then that's what it's going to remain. It wasn't enough to bump it up or down either way.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant amongst the commissioners? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this request? In favor? Yeah, if you'll come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Sam McQuagg. We live at 8880 Veterans Parkway. We have a common property line with the development for the full length of the north side of our property, which is give or take 1,400 feet from Veterans Parkway all the way to the back. We have also, there's a creek depicted on their application plan that runs through our property where we have a culvert that was put in place 30 years ago. It's basically two 48-inch pipes with about a 42 to 44 foot run that goes under our driveway, common driveway for 3 houses that live on that property. My mother lives at 8866, which is immediately south, and my brother's at 8850, which is immediately south of her. All share the common driveway. I got some photos of capacity for that bottom area that depict the capacity for the water, and what concerns me is the retention pond that they show on the south edge of the development, which basically appears to be around 2.5 acres, the best I can scale it. There is no scale on their rendering, so you just kind of have to swag the size of it. But looking at that photo right there, it would be to the left. The property line's approximately 200 foot north of that location up the creek. These photos were taken in 2009. We've been there since 1988. To my recollection, this is the only time the creek has been out of the bank on the head wall side of the creek. But it is a pretty impressive feat. This is the head wall side, and you can't really see the creek right there because it's actually running out. Now, a lot of times we do have water running in the creek from that low-lying area, but never running out. This is running We have a low place on both sides of the culverts to kind of work as spillways that are far away from the culverts themselves to try to prevent washout. And that's what you're looking at there. We're standing on top of the culverts now, looking toward the houses. And this is back looking into the head wall side. Looking up this photo right here, directly north, about 200 feet, is where they're depicting a retention pond coming to the property line. My concern is I don't really know the classification between retention or detention, if there's any difference. They depict it as an actual detention pond. I'm assuming it'll have to have a spillway. I'm assuming that it'll reach full capacity at some point, some event, and have to use that spillway. I don't know how the water's going to be regulated out of that development. But the property is not developed now, and that's what it's capable of. This creek bank is approximately 3.5 feet tall, and it usually runs with that much water in it on any given day. This is looking from the house at the entire bottom. You can see the two little masonry walls on either side of the driveway down there. If you look right at the center of the picture, water's running out on this side and on the other side, which is running off the property that in this case would be to the right, about 200 feet from those abutments down there, or from those masonry walls down there. All these photos are 2009. This is a more recent photo in March of this year. This is the head wall side. We've lost a few trees during the years. They fall or whatever, and we have to clean them out. But you can see it's to the top of the two pipes, and we got approximately another 18-inch rise to the masonry wall on that side as well, and about maybe 15 feet from the masonry wall to the inlets to those pipes. Looking at that photo, if you look to the extreme left of the photo, just past where that water's standing, about another 100 to 120 feet is where the property line is. And don't know anything about detention ponds or retention ponds, but I'm expecting that they're going to put it in that low-lying area there. I don't know how that works, but I can't get access to any actual engineering plans to be able to see what they're actually planning to do there. My concern is these pipes were put in 30 years ago. They were put in by Alexander Contracting, and at the time they described them as something, and I'm not familiar with this term either, but they described them as something that would withstand anything except a 100-year event. And that's with no development. And we're talking about a significant amount of development, and I'm just assuming a significant larger amount of water as well associated with that. I have lesser concerns about the actual environmental of the creek, what will actually be coming in it, things like that, which brings me to their sewage plans for the actual development. I'm not sure how they're going to plan to handle sewage. I can't get access to that, or haven't been able to as of yet. So I don't know if it's actually into the city system, if it's like a septic system, if it will require a pumping station. Is there possibilities for overflow in that area if it does? I have those concerns because everything is downhill to that point. Well, this is the exhaust side, but everything is downhill to the point of the intake side of that creek. That's later where you can kind of see what the creek bank looks like. This was actually December of 2015, and that's as high as it got then. And this was during the fall with no leaves, not a lot to stop the water and things like that. Trees weren't growing, so that's. But we get a lot of water in there. We get a lot of water down there, and I'm concerned about where the water from the development's going to go. Primary concern. Secondary concern is how the sewage will be treated and where it'll go. I don't really have And there was one other question too. I'm concerned about the actual elevation of the retention pond or the dam, what we'll actually be looking at down there and how that'll be landscaped. But I'm sure that's something we can address later during the construction phase. But Mr. Renfro mentioned that there would have to be an approved drainage plan before the permit could be issued. And then he qualified that by saying if a permit is required. In what situation would they not have to obtain an approved drainage plan before anything? I mean, is that something that's going to be required before any development can start on this? Will it have to be approved, and if so, by who?
I think that there is, but
It will be required in this case, and engineering will be the one who require it and either approve or deny it.
Is that, when you say engineering, you mean Columbus
City.
Consolidated?
The city engineering, yes, sir.
And if I obtained a representative of my own from an engineering firm, would they have access to those plans before?
Once EMC submits those documents, they become public record, and at that point, yes, you could.
Okay. All right, and the last thing I would ask is if I'll have access to these proceedings online, similar to what you sent me in advance of the proceedings.
You will. This entire meeting will be posted on YouTube, and you can have that as well. Yes, sir.
All right. I'm not opposed to the project. I mean, I think it's probably a good fit for the community. There's certainly a lot of people around there that I'm associated with that seem to think it's a good fit for the community. But I think it, without a doubt, should have conditions. And that's my feeling on it this morning. All right.
thank you. It does sound like, perhaps, Mr. Womack, if you,
I can explain a lot.
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds, if you'll come back to the mic, because he does have the sewage question and some questions, obviously, about the.
In regards to the storm, we're mandated to match the existing conditions that are now or in better. So the fact that you have that much water running on your site now, we will not increase it one bit. We can't. It's Blue Book law, it's the Columbus UDO, all the way up to the 100-year rain event. So like you're saying, the 100-year, the amount of inches that fall per hour in a 24-hour period, that's kind of what they gauge the rain event on. So we will be mandated to put the detention. If you put my slide back up there again to show the site plan. We're in the process of surveying it now, so where we show the detention pond at now is just kind of us eyeballing it where the low area is. Yes, typically you put the detention pond in the low area, but we also, instead of making one big one, we may try to put smaller ones in different areas to catch the water and slowly release it instead of hitting it all at one area too. So we're under the idea of trying to topo it all right now and figure out where the best little pockets are to make sure that we could capture it that way.
I think we're trying to get your site plan up. Give us just a second.
On the application.
No.
But in regards to the stormwater, no, we will not increase any stormwater leaving the site now. But that's what we do everything on. The idea between the detention and retention, they don't want to hold water in the pond, so we're going to sit there, when the rainfall hits, we're going to hold that rainwater and then slowly drain it out to match the existing conditions now, and then it'd be a dry detention pond when it's not raining, because they don't want to hold the water, have the mosquito issues and things along those lines, so they don't want to hold the water on site.
Here we go. I think Mr. Johnson is going to put your site plan up. Thank you.
I mean, and the idea, I mean, like I said, everything was preliminary. We're assuming about a 1.5 to, maybe a 2-acre detention pond for the thing, but like I said, if we put it in multiple areas, and I think that's the older one I sent you the first time. I think I got a newer one here, but they've already tweaked some stuff. Because we've slid down, we're not going to have 2 accesses here. We are.
Yeah. We got to get you on mic, so hang on one second.
I'll slide back over.
What is the dashed black line is depicted?
That is a buffer that we're staying away from. And there again, since that is a state water, the county makes you have a 50-foot buffer. It's a 20-foot buffer, and then the county enforces another 25-foot buffer. So wherever that rest of the vegetation line is, we have 50 foot that we're staying away from that no matter what. So you have an additional buffer on that stream where it is. So that's us kind of figuring out where that buffer may be at. That's the area that we're going to stay out of. The idea is to have as much landscape buffer around the property as possible, because we want it to feel like it's kind of enclosed, that we're not imposing on anybody along those lines. And like I said, we slid it. Can you slide it down, Will, just so we can show the entrance? Because we're trying to, there's little overlook areas where the idea was maybe put little pockets in there to the right of the drive to make sure that we could reduce the size of that detention pond down there. So we're not having all the water going to one location. So we're trying to capture it in different little pockets and slowly release it that way. Like I said, in this one, we slid the drive down as far away from the Veterans intersection as possible, just so you had more stacking, more time to react and things along those lines. We are in talks with Forestry talking about maybe trying to thin out that little sight distance area a little bit there, just to make sure that you have plenty of sight distance at the intersection of Pierce Chapel and Veterans, because it is kind of a sharp angle right there. It's not the most, it's very wooded. I mean, it's not very clean at all, so we're trying to talk with Forestry on that aspect of it all, just to see what they'll allow us to do on that by still meeting the zoning requirements for that, that overlay area.
Thank you. I think Mr. King has got a comment or a question.
Well, I did go by the property and looked at it, from the road, but what's in there now? Is it off forestation, or is it any flat areas that are clear?
No, it's all completely wooded.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Kenner has a question.
Yeah, there was a question raised about the sewage. The staff report said that the site is serviced by
City.
the city. Is that true? So this will go into a sewage system that goes to the plant?
We're in talks with Columbus Waterworks right now. They have their budgeted to extend that main that's feeding up that system now. They've already had it budgeted. We're just in talks with them now to see if we can make it faster by helping out with our parcel of land. But the Columbus Waterworks has budgeted to extend that sewer service up there.
But the point is, you're not on septic, I think is what the question is.
The goal is not to be on septic.
Correct.
Yeah, we would either pump it, if we didn't have gravity there, we would have to put in some sort of a lift station and service it to the nearest
That's to be
location.
determined.
Yeah, okay. So you're going to be connected to the sewer system somehow before you go operational then?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Bollinger.
In the setup of this site, are you looking at clear cutting this entire piece and then replanting, or are you going to leave the existing?
Based on terrain, we want to leave as much of the existing as possible. That's what I'm saying.
So that this buffer would be what's existing, you would not?
Pretty much, like I say, we were talking with the forestry to see if we couldn't clear maybe a little bit of the underbrush, not clear it, but just kind of so that you can kind of see through a little bit. I mean, we don't want everybody seeing through there, and we want to have that buffer to veterans so that the noise and things along those lines, you're not going to come to that. But we to see if we couldn't have a little couple windows of blips through so that you can actually see through there, so it's not completely forested.
And I guess for planning, my understanding is that overlay, there's a certain size tree that you're not allowed to cut down without some sort of approval. Is that correct?
That's correct, and they would have to go through forestry for that to be approved.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this?
Real quick, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Reese.
Mr. Warbeck, I drove by the area as well, and I think this will be a great development for the area, and I think you're in a good position because your neighbors, he said he supported.
Yes, sir.
He just have a few concerns. And I just simply want a public commitment that you're going to work with Mr. McQuagg, because we just recently saw the families in Alabama who private resident driveway washed away, and they were stranded for a while. And I would not want that to happen to these.
And like I said, I mean, you haven't seen anything because we're in the preliminary stages of everything.
Right.
We haven't designed, like I said, we're just now getting a survey. I mean, at any point, and you want to kind of see the idea, we're like I said, as soon as we submit to the city, it's open records anyways. We're not going to be hiding anything. Look, we can show you, you're talking about getting your own engineer. We could provide our hydraulic reports and everything showing every kind of runoff that we're doing.
We don't even know what our capacity is.
Well, okay, we can't have dialogue off mic. So if we're going to dialogue, I need you both up on the mic. But I think we've pretty much got what we need at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I was looking for an engineer to look at these plans is we don't know what capacity we have now.
Right.
With the culvert that we have. Obviously, it's got 30 years of wear and tear on it.
Sure.
You know, it had an unformed concrete face wall on it, but it's deteriorated as well. We've lost a couple of trees there and pulled some of it up, and some other things. So, you know, we don't know what our capacity is. We don't know the actual condition of the culvert itself, you know, from a professional standpoint. So those are some things that I would love to know that we would be working with a developer on, as far as possible inspections, how much water is going to come down through there and things like that.
Like I said, yeah, like I said, we would be matching or embedding,
of course,
our parcel. That's what I mean. I could guarantee that part of it. I mean, the other parcels that are feeding upstream from that goes up under Pierce Chapel or that creek, I don't know. I mean, that's the same applies to them when they develop their land. You can't see any more than what you've been seeing now.
Right, thank you. Anything else on this arena? I've yet to ask if there was anybody in the audience who was opposed. So if there is anyone in the audience who is opposed to this,
Thank you.
Yes.
Please come forward, but I don't think we've got anybody. All right, commissioners, any other questions for the applicant or any other discussion? And if not, do I hear a motion? Mr. King.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you had a question or not. Case of REZN 0618-1169, request to rezone 40 acres of land located at 9056 Veterans Parkway. I move that we approve this request.
And do I hear a second, Mr. Bollinger? Okay. All of those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it is unanimous, so we will submit this as a recommendation for approval. Thank you for coming forward with that. That brings us to our next case, which is REZN-07-18-1397. And this is a request for a text amendment to amend the text of the Unified Development Ordinance, also known as the UDO, in regards to adding section 4.9, short-term rentals. Mr. Renfro.
Yes, ma'am. The summary of this is right now we're trying to manage the Airbnb craze that is going on. So we just want to get ahead of it. Director Hutchinson is going to come forward and speak more about that.
Okay, wonderful. So if you will just do me a favor and identify yourself for the public.
John Hutchinson, Director of Inspections and Codes.
Thank you.
I'm going to kind of rebrief on using the council presentation we did July 10th to kind of highlight the oversight, and then any questions you all have, we can go from there. Ideally, the intent is for the short-term rentals to be an accommodation for transient guests, either in the primary structure or any approved accessory dwelling, provided lodging for a period of time not to exceed 30 consecutive days. So anytime up to that point. If it's over 30 days, and there's typically rental agreements and things like that, so we're not getting into that. So it's any time under 30 consecutive days. The requirements that we would like to set forth is that they would completion of a short-term rental permit application. Do they have a copy of this? No? Okay. I have it. I can put it up on the thing. Completion of a short-term rental permit application, completion of a criminal background check, obtaining a valid business license, and then they would be required to renew the permit annually. So as they would have to come into our office, especially for the 24-hour contact person or whatever management agency that may be running it, or if the owner's doing it themselves, we request that they come in every year to renew. So we make sure we have a constant data and it's current and we know what's going on. All right. Well, there's a copy there. And we'll go through kind of quickly what's on there. So we have the property address, you have the type of building, whether it's residential, single family, multifamily, if it's a duplex, if it's an apartment or multifamily, if it's a condo or an approved accessory dwelling. Approved accessory dwellings have to be a detached structure, no more than 1,000 square feet, and it has to have at least an acreage already, at least an acre or more already. We have some that are grandfathered in, we have some in the historic district, or some that are in Lake Bottom that are grandfathered that don't meet that requirement, and they already have detached cottages, and those would be eligible as well. And then the type of rental is either a partial dwelling, if somebody wants to rent out a bedroom or their basement or however, or if they wanted to do the full house rental, that would also be approved on the application. On the application, like I said, we're asking for the applicant, the owner, the 24-hour contact person, and how the property is registered. So we know what site they're using, whether it's Airbnb or Vrbo or HomeAway or anything else. So to make sure that we can track that type of information. On the kind of the code side is that we wanted to make sure that these individuals attest to these certain things, that they have to have a certain level of insurance, that smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, exits and escape plans are provided and on site, that they comply with any standards for property maintenance codes, that's not run down or missing utilities, things like that. No unpaid obligations or liens or taxes for the city. So if they owe property taxes or anything like that, we make sure that they're current on all that kind of information. And if a renter, because like I said, we can't necessarily tell them that they shouldn't sublease. We know they shouldn't, but to be able to know that information, we will ask them to make sure that they bring us consent. If they're not listed as the owner of the property when we go to the site and check it, to make sure that they have consent from that property owner to do what they're doing. So if they are renting a house from somebody and then they want to sublease a bedroom in that house, we make sure that that property owner is notified, that they know that that's going on in that property before we'll accept the application. The short-term rental agent, that person is available to handle problems. So if we get any noise complaints, anything like that, that's the person, because we have that 24-hour contact person, which will be shared with local authorities, police department, all that kind of stuff. So if it is after hours, they know the person they need to contact. So that's why we wanted to do the yearly renewal, so we can make sure we keep that information current.
John, quick question. Back to that lease component of the subleasing. Yes, that's found oftentimes in leases, but what's the concern here, the reason you feel the need to enforce that? Wouldn't that be the owner's responsibility?
Well, say like an apartment complex, and somebody wants to sublease an apartment their apartment room. We've seen them on there, that people be in Whisperwood or other places, and we're like, it'll be like downtown loft, and it'll be like Johnson Mill Lofts, and we're like, well, you're not supposed to be doing that as a sublease of your master agreement with.
Yeah, I understand it's a violation of the lease, but why is it the city's business? Why is that not between the
Because we don't want to authorize something that's violating another law.
If you're giving a permit for someone to
sublet. Yeah, I'm giving them a permit to do that, and then the owner of that apartment complex comes back to us and say, hey, why are you allowing them to run an Airbnb or permitting them to do an Airbnb in that location when it violates the lease? So we're just trying to cover ourselves to make sure anything that's happening in that situation.
Okay.
Because of permit issues. That's if you weren't requiring a permit to be purchased.
That's correct.
So really, what you're saying is that only real homeowners are the ones, the true mortgage holder or the property owner is the person that can engage in these type activities.
That's correct.
Okay.
So like I said, the duties of the short-term, the rental agent, like I said, they'll be able to receive and accept service of any notice of violation. So if we get a noise complaint or trash complaint, solid waste complaint, any kind of stuff like that, that 24-hour contact person will be their legalized agent. So therefore, if we have issues and we have to issue citations, that's who will be receiving the citation. Regulation procedures, like I said, the Visitors Bureau is kind of running the oversight to kind of help us track these down. So they will be the ones checking, all the different websites to see who that is. Because ideally, we personally don't have the personnel, because if you've been on Airbnb in these sites, until you actually book the room, you don't know where exactly the street is. It's kind of a general area. So they'll kind of be able to be our eyes on the ground to help us with that. But because the Visitor Bureau is not a part of us, they can't be an official enforcement arm, but they'll help us with the complaints. Typically, we get these anyway, not necessarily for this, but say if we do COs or any other type of business license, we get people telling on each other, hey, so-and-so's over here renting their place, and so we'll use that network to be able to proceed with that. The CBB, as well as us, will maintain a file of all short-term rental locations, and like I said, their job is to help us advise the city of any additions. So as we know that people may come on that we are not aware of, then we'll go out there and give them a time frame, which is they need to come in and make sure that they come in and get an application. So the way we have it listed right now is 3 violations within a 12-month period, and the permit will be revoked for a period of 12 months. Any previous violation of building, health, or life safety codes provisions, the owners must demonstrate compliance. So if we go out there and in investigating that they don't have the permit, any of these, the things that they attested to, that they don't, if they, you know, they got a hole in the roof or they got something else that's not working, we will also hold that until make sure those things are corrected before we allow them to reopen or continue. Ideally here, what we wanted to do is create a first time, typically any violation of the UDO or any codes goes to recorder's court, and typically there is not a fee number or a fee attested to it, and we wanted to make sure that there is a minimum fine for people who assume they would try to get away with this kind of stuff. Because sometimes you can go to recorder's court and it's kind of at the judge's discretion, but we want to make sure we had a set fee to start. So that's why we chose the $500 on the first violation, $750 on the second within those 12 months, and the third violation over $1,000. We also have the rule to, you know, we can override that and just go ahead and pull it if it's an egregious violation, if it's something major that's happened or happened at that site or happened as a part of the Airbnb, some type of burglary or anything crazy like that, we could just go ahead and just revoke it, period. We wouldn't necessarily have to go through the step process. The appeal process would be to the city manager or authorized agent, me. So we'll just have to deal with that as it comes through. Taxes, that's why I have Yvonne here in case y'all have any questions on this. These are all the taxes once we have a license for them that they would be required to pay. And that was the timeline getting to you guys. We got the dates mixed up, but intent is to go August 14th for the first reading to the UDO with you guys' approval. So, any questions? 28th, I'm sorry.
Any questions, commissioners?
I have
Mr.
one.
Dudley.
Early on, you explained what all the applicant would have to do as far as paying for the permit and the background check and so forth. What would the total cost of doing all that be to the applicant?
The permit itself will be $40, but
Right.
there's a $20 permit fee for each background check. So
Okay.
so if you have, say if you have your applicant, which is the owner, you have the owner information and the 24-hour person. If that's all three different people, that would be $20 plus the 40 of the permit itself, because we're recouping the cost for
So
the.
20 for each of the, so $60
So it'd be
in that
60
case.
plus the 40 would be $100 if it's all
Right.
different.
All points of
100 or
contact.
less.
Correct.
And then there are no other costs that the applicant would have to incur?
Now, it'd be a yearly
An
renewal
annual
fee. So
renewal.
as you come in, it would be
Yeah.
another $100. If
Right.
those same three people, we'd have to check your
Right.
background again, and we'd go through the permit application again.
Okay.
Oh,
Correct,
yeah.
yeah, plus the
And
cost
your
of the
business license, good
And
point.
how much is that?
Business license is how much?
My name is Yvonne Ivy, and I'm with the Finance Department, Occupation Tax Section. The administrative fee to process the business license is going to be $75, and it's on a calendar year basis. So therefore, that license will expire as of 12/31 of that year, and they have until April 1 of the following year to renew it. They also have to report to us, in order to renew it, they have to file an occupation tax return in which they have to report to us the amount of revenue that they generated, and we tax on gross receipts, the amount of revenue that they generated in the prior year and what they think they're going to do in the current year. And that will determine how much they have to pay to renew. Now, currently, the tax rate for lodging, transits, or hotel operators is $3.21 per thousand on their taxable gross receipts. Therefore, they would still fall within that same tax class and tax rate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for the applicant? I don't see any.
I do, I have
Yes.
one, real
Yes,
quick.
Mr. Greenblatt.
And this is just I guess, a personal thing. If my brother-in-law's house burns down and I move him into my house, or I move him into a cottage that I've got, and he pays, a substantial amount of rent, do I have to have this permit?
No, this is short term for 30 days or less. So if it's
It would be
something,
30. Let's say he burned down and he's going to be there for 25 days.
I mean, and he's compensating you?
Yeah,
I mean,
he's helping pay the expenses and.
Okay, if we were to treat them like we do other hotelers, anyone who has to, due to a casualty such as a fire or natural disasters, thank you, we do allow hotel lodge and operators to exempt the gross receipts that they generate from that renter because of that natural casualty that just took place. And there's an exemption worksheet that we attach to our hotel motel excise tax form. So therefore, if you If your brother-in-law, if he has to, go ahead.
You're going well beyond.
I'm sorry.
I don't have a permit. I never extended to having a permit, but my brother-in-law's house burns down. I move him in, and he's helping me pay the expenses for 21 days while his house is being renovated.
But you're not advertising as an Airbnb or a hotel, and I think, isn't that the difference here? I mean, with this is
That's
to...
what I'm asking is, you know, because you're saying that if I'm renting, I still have to have a permit. That's what this says.
Right. Okay.
It doesn't say about advertising.
So I got you.
It says that if I am renting, then I have to have a permit.
No, I got you. So even though we up here may know the distinction is you're advertising as an Airbnb, what you're saying, there's nothing in writing to differentiate you from an Airbnb personnel.
Well,
So let me give them an opportunity to speak on that.
Coming from the taxation office, if you generate revenue, that's taxable income, as far as this
Regardless.
office is concerned.
Regardless.
Well,
Regardless.
is the key on this having the requirement for the business license? In other words, he wouldn't, to rent to his brother-in-law, he wouldn't have to have a business license.
That is correct. If he doesn't charge his brother-in-law to occupy his home while he's going through this event that just happened in his life, then we wouldn't even get involved with this because money does not exchange hands.
So if your college-age kid is paying rent to live in your house, it sounds like you're supposed to be paying taxes. Oops. Okay. Mr. Brannon.
So the questions that I would have is, A, do we have some sort of rampant Airbnb problem where we have a bunch of people with really bad homes and things like that, and we've had numbers of safety issues that we need to address this? And then the second question is, why just the 30 days? Why wouldn't this apply to anybody? If I rented out my house for regardless of the amount of time, why does it matter if it's 30 days or not? So this is a pretty big difference here. Why are some people treated one way and some
I think this is,
not?
if you're, I mean, you could rent it out for 3 days. I mean, this is saying.
Anytime up to 30 days.
But if I rent it more than 30 days,
that's a whole different category.
Yeah, that's different.
I mean,
I know, but why?
because that's lodging. I mean, well, I'll let you talk about that.
By state statute?
Yeah, it's lodging.
If you rent out property that someone is using as transient living, and for some other reason like the extended stay, they go beyond the 30 days. By law, on the 31st day, they are not subject to hotel motel excise taxes.
Right.
But we will charge the occupation tax, and there is some exception to the rules for sales tax, but the Georgia Department of Revenue will have to act on that. So if they're going beyond the 31 days, that means that is their abode and that's where they live.
But
So that's what we consider.
and that's still well beyond, we're in the revenue portion of it. And I understand, look, if you're generating revenue, you need to be paying your business tax. I mean, we're business, some, have business licenses and whatnot. But like the permitting, the $40 permit, getting the background checks, inspections by codes and enforcement and stuff like that, and that's more on John's side. Why isn't this applied to those folks as well? And it's not why wouldn't it apply beyond that? If you're renting a piece of property to someone, regardless of how long they stay there, this describes everything you'd want, regardless if it's for 1 day or 1 year.
Then you're verging on what we call residential rental income. And by Columbus Code, anyone who rent their property for residential stay, they are exempt from occupation tax and business licensing.
But I'm not even to that part yet. I'm on getting this $40 license and permit. So I'm before you even get to your office. So this is the enforcement side of why is this only applying to 1 to 30 days? The first part, the rental.
Well, anything beyond that is under the property maintenance laws. So if anybody comes in and they're a tenant that lives in a property and they have deficiencies that are in their homes, they're more than welcome to call our office, and then we inspect them and make sure at that point. When the property is built, it receives a certificate of completion. So at that point, it is done and it meets all codes unless any future alterations are made. And then once any alterations are made, we go back and inspect it at that point. So this is only to cover these short-term rentals where you're in, but any other rental agreement, if it's a tenant that's living in substandard conditions, they can come to our office and then we inspect. But at that point, then we go back to review when that permit was pulled, when it was built, to make sure it met code at that time, and check the floor plans, make sure any of those alterations weren't made. So anything after that point, we would check it anyway.
But why wouldn't you, if you're renting it out, why wouldn't you, regardless of the length, Why wouldn't you require them to get the permit, not the license, the tax side, but the permit side? Why did not require everyone that rents out their property, regardless of the length, to get this permit? And I'm actually not, I'm arguing this the wrong way, but, and I also still would like to know if this is some huge problem that we've had where we had a bunch of Airbnbs go bad in Columbus that we need this.
Well, I think in the very
sort of
beginning, he
regulation.
said that they're trying to get ahead of, you don't want to wait till it becomes a bad situation to address it. That's what he opened the
Correct.
statement by saying that. So I think that answers that question. But in terms of the other part of it,
Can I pose another question, maybe will help clarify?
yeah, let Mr. Kenner.
Yeah, can I pose another case that I'm aware of right now that you may be able to illustrate the difference between what Mr. Brennan is doing and this case. In my neighborhood, there was a woman that died, okay? Her daughter doesn't want to sell the house right away, but she wants to have some income, so she wants to rent it out, okay? And that would be for 6 months or a year or something like that, okay? Now, what applies to that case that is different than what applies to this short-term thing of 30 days or less?
The length of stay. You guys are making this harder than it needs to be. If you are spending the night in a campground, in someone's house or whatever for more than 30 days, you jump into a residential category. You are no longer a temporary lodging situation, am I right?
That's correct.
So in that situation, if she puts that house up for rent as a residential place to rent, and she has this lease that is signed for 6 months or a year or whatever, that takes her out of a, for lack of a better word, temporary lodging or a vacation category.
That is correct.
I don't know if you want to expand on
That
that?
is correct.
But that I understand, yes, I understand the mathematical difference between staying one night or 31 nights. And I understand that it's a difference, but these things that we're looking for, life safety, whether they've got a felony or something like that, why does it matter if somebody stays in your house for 1 night or 300 nights? Why wouldn't you apply these same things?
Okay, so let me stop you right there. Correct me if I'm wrong. If Mr. Brannon has an Airbnb and I want to come stay at his Airbnb, I'm not the one you're looking for the criminal background check on, right?
No.
That's where you're getting confused.
No, I'm not confused about that either.
We're all on the same page.
Oh, well, I'm lost then, because you're asking why does the homeowner have to go by the criminal background check?
The simple question is, why are you doing a background check on this owner and making him get a permit and making him have all these responsibilities when I am going to rent the house that I bought up the hill from me to a person for 2 years, but I have no responsibility to that? And they can have as much of a party, make as much noise, put as much trash on the street, use as many of the facilities they want to without having any requirements to be checked on. That is what we're saying.
Gotcha.
Which is why I'm having a major issue with the way this is written and put down.
Gotcha. Now that makes sense.
Does that clarify?
That clarifies it. I'm not an advocate for Airbnb, but it seems like it's going to stop a lot of people from wanting to engage in this service. And I think that could be more harm to the city than helpful if people want to come here and enjoy that type of lodging and not to be forced to stay in certain folks' hotels, but want to stay in a private home. Well, now we're preventing that.
In the good summary that Mr. Greenblatt gave, I really would like to hear that answer. Why, the sum of it is, why are these permits being required in a temporary situation and not in a permanent situation?
If you were in a permanent situation and you were violating any of those rules, that would be a citation that we would issue regardless.
No, what he's saying is, why are you requiring the background check on someone who's renting a room in their house for 2 weeks versus renting their house out for a year?
Well, we'll have to get with the city attorney, but typically rental agreements and lease agreements between two private citizens are a separate situation. We were trying to cover anything that we deal with on a permitting side. So if it comes in as a permit, then these are the requirements that are done. We don't check everyone's lease. If somebody's signing a place whenever they are, we don't see a copy of that lease. We're just trying to make sure subleases, especially if we're dealing with home occupations or home offices and home businesses, that's the only time the city ever sees a private lease, because then we know that that homeowner has approved that person to do that type of work. So like I said, when it comes to the permitting side, two private citizens agreeing to a lease, is nothing we would ever enter into and have to check on.
But that's what an Airbnb is. An Airbnb is simply a connecting service. The agreement's between two citizens, not between me and Airbnb and the
But
and the
there's
owner.
also no regulations at Airbnb locally onto what's going on. There's
But
no
there's no
regulations
regulations to me, right now, there's no regulations to me, other than the typical, what you're talking about, if my home's dilapidated, y'all can come look at it and mark it for demolition and whatnot. But there's no regulation on me renting out my house right now for more than 31 days. So I get,
And Director John, we're certainly not, this is not against you guys. I mean, we're looking at the policy. We're certainly, yeah. It just seems like this. It just seems like it's unnecessarily overly burdensome for someone trying to engage in a small rental of their property for under 30 days.
Well, it seems like this is the 30 days or less, that is a regular reoccurring commercial enterprise. They're trying to get money, they're trying to get income, a dedicated income for a particular property on a recurring basis. Whereas renting to, the daughter renting the house of her mother while she's settling the estate is not it's a money transaction, but it's not a commercial activity. Okay, in the case of regular income that the short-term rentals are trying to keep. That's the distinction I see.
But some people, Mr. Karen, they do have multiple rental houses, and they have scores of rental houses, and that is a commercial enterprise for them.
Yeah.
And I would argue the case that if I'm trying to rent a house, it is a commercial whether I have 1 or 10.
Right.
Only because you're trying to cover your expenses that.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be charging rent.
Exactly. And I think it's the same different if you have a cottage and you're going to rent it by the week or by the month or whatever the case may be. So.
And might I add, please? We're trying to do this fairly across the board because these short-term rentals, they're in competition with our hotelers. And we make them abide by our rules, and they're collecting monies. And so we're trying to have the short-term renters to abide by the same, almost the same rules as our hotelers. And they have a true argument to say we're having to pay sales tax. We're having to pay 8% lodging tax.
Yeah.
We're having to pay occupation tax. I might as well go underground myself and do the same thing. So that's what we're trying to do, to make this equitable across the board as much as we can.
So we make hotel owners go through a background check?
No, we do not.
So it's not the same then?
We try to make it as equitable as we can across the board, though.
so would this apply to the hoteliers then?
I'm sorry?
Would this apply to the hoteliers?
All of a sudden, the background checks. and
Except for the, yes,
ahead.
ma'am, except for the background check. They do pay they have to obtain a health marshal slip from the health department. The health department get involved with hotels, but they're not getting involved with short-term rentals. The hotelers have to obtain a certificate of occupancy from the Inspections and Codes Office. In lieu of the certificate of occupancy, we're having them to get the short-term rental permit. And then after that, it's the same thing across the board. If that hoteler is in violation where they're not paying their taxes or didn't renew their business license, we're sending special enforcement. The same thing is going to apply for our short-term rental people.
And so I guess the idea is you're providing a short circuit for the one-off situations or for the small business person, the one family owner. But what you're also telling me is that there are already laws on the books, city and state, that regulate short-term rentals where they're supposed to be paying their fees and stuff like that, and we're just not enforcing it for whatever reason. Which I know we got a staff issue too that needs help, but there are already laws on the books. So why add yet another layer of regulation? You're supposed to be paying their hotel motel tax regardless of whether it's Airbnb or the Hilton.
Except, I guess, without the business license, you don't know how to, you can't.
Well, Georgia is just getting into play with this because this is a hot topic across the nation, and every city is trying to wrap their heads around this. What do we do, and how do we be fair to our other business owners who operate hotels? So this is the best thing that we can do. We looked at other cities as far as in Savannah and even in New Orleans, and we tried to mimic what they put into play. because it's already in action. And everything is a work, you know, in process as we go along to try to better this. But this is what we've come up with just based on the information that we obtain from other cities throughout the United States.
Sure.
So I think I'm not going to try and repeat it all, but in summary, it sounds as if this is being brought forward to, lack of a better word, regulate appropriately operations that are acting as if they are in a hotel or lodging situation, to bring them on board with getting a business license and being compliant with codes and enforcement, so that we can also appropriately tax them. I mean, I think that's it in a summary. I mean, I realize the background check is a bone of contention. I hear that loud and clear. I guess I'd be curious, outside of the background check, is it still?
Well, it's not just the background check. I mean, there's the fees, you know, just like, what, a decade ago when the city was fighting with Expedia or whoever it was to collect the motel tax. Why not go after the Airbnb that's provided? Because there's your central point that you could say, look, you guys need to be remitting, if you're handling these transactions, you need to be remitting this money back to the city.
And be permanent, and properly permitted.
Right. Well, and again, Airbnb is just a connection. You know, I just have a problem with it restricting an economy. It's another layer of bureaucracy and red tape. If somebody in Columbus, you know, they're trying to get ahead and they want to rent out their room on a short-term basis because they've got a nice place downtown and that helps them get ahead, this is just one more thing. I mean, just all of these steps here, and again, there's already laws. If you're under 30 days, you're supposed to be following the hotel laws. I mean, that's regardless. So this is just adding yet another layer to what already exists. And it sounds like we've got, I don't want to say a problem, because I know John's working really hard and is short-staffed. They don't have enough people to go around and
check up
police
on
this.
Yeah.
So we're adding an extra layer of burden for laws that already exist.
Gotcha. Any other comments amongst the commissioners, comments or questions? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment? I don't see anybody coming forward. Anyone who would like to speak against it? If I do not see anyone, which I don't, do I have a motion on this text amendment? Any motion? No motion. Is there a motion to deny this text amendment? Mr. Greenblatt.
Yes, regarding REZN 07-18-1397, text amendment change to the UDO, I move that we do not approve.
And so I have a second. So this, what has been brought forward is a motion to deny the approval of the text amendment, and a second has been brought forward to deny the approval of the text amendment. All of those in favor of denying the text amendment, please raise your right hand. Okay, so it is unanimous to deny it. So we will submit a request for denial of this text amendment. Thank you. I don't see any other new business on our schedule. Is there any announcements that need to be made?
Nope, that's it. Next meeting on the 14th.
All right, thank you so much. We are adjourned.
Hello everyone, I'm Mayor Teresa Tomlinson, and I want to talk to you a minute about the importance of AIDS and HIV testing. Today, there's women and families suffering with AIDS, and in fact, women are some of those that are on the steepest incline for having AIDS and testing positive for AIDS. Folks, information is power. You need to know what your status is related to AIDS and HIV, and the testing is so simple. We're talking one simple prick of the finger, one little Band-Aid, and 1 minute of your time to get peace of mind and to know the status of your health. There's so many options today, so many treatments. Live a long, healthy, full life. Know your medical status. Get testing for AIDS and HIV at the Deborah Smith Wellness Center. The information is there below. And also you can go to the health department on Comer Avenue. Know your health status. Live a healthy life.
Hey, this is your boy, comedian Bruce Bruce, and you're watching CCG TV in Columbus, Georgia, and I'll holler back at you. Holler back.
Good evening. Testing. Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity just to welcome each and every one of you to the July 16th, 2018 regular board meeting for the Muskogee County School District. We are going to start with a word of inspiration. And while we don't have anyone coming forward tonight to do an inspiration, I thought it would be a wonderful idea that we revisit our mission, our values, our vision at this time. With any organization, it's important that we internalize the mission, the vision, and the values. So I think this is something that we as board members need to keep before us when we're making decisions. So we're going to review that periodically. So Vice Chair Mark Cantrell, he's going to go over the mission, vision, and values for us, just as a reminder of why we're here and why we do what we do. Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our mission for Muskogee County School District is to inspire and equip all students to achieve unlimited potential. Our vision for the school district is a beacon of educational excellence where all are known, valued, and inspired. Our values, the Muskogee County School District fosters a healthy organization where we embrace equity and diversity. We hold ourselves and others to the same high standards. We commit to continuous learning and improvement. We treat everyone with dignity and respect, and we serve the needs of others. Our strategic anchors: we will make decisions that benefit student achievement, that are fiscally responsible with an eye on return on our investment, that invest in stakeholders, and that promote equity and access. And that's the Muskogee County School District mission and our vision.
Thank you so much, Vice Chairman Cantrell. I think it's important that we keep that before us, and we will visit that time and time again, because I believe that it's important that the mission and the vision is internalized from the board table to the classroom. So I think that's important. Okay. At this time, we're going to move on to the pledge to our flag. If you would, please join me and stand for the pledge to our flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's always a little strange when it's the summertime and we don't have the kids leading the pledge, but I think we as adults, we remember the pledge. We did a good job. At this time, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as it's stated? Okay, there's been a motion and a second on the table. If you are in favor of approving the agenda as it stands, if you would, raise your hand, please. Take a hand vote. And that passes unanimously, and we will get started. At this time, I want to take just a moment to recognize our visitors, and we're going to start with our principals and assistant principals of our fine schools. If you would, please stand. Let us recognize you. All of our administration, principals, assistant principals. Also at this time, I see the President, Chris Markwood. If you would, please stand, from Columbus State University. Give him a round of applause. We have a wonderful, wonderful relationship and partnership with Columbus State University. We don't take that for granted, and we thank you for being here, and we definitely thank you for your partnership with Muskogee County School District. Also, is there anyone here from the MEF board? I did not get an email. Is there anyone? Please stand and represent me for me. If you're on the board, please stand. Let us recognize you. These are wonderful partnerships, and we want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due. Thank you for all you do. I see Alan and Marianne Richter. If you would, please stand. The director of our library and our museum, if you would. Okay. And all right. Thank you all so very much for being here, and thank you for coming today. At this time, we will move on to 3.01, and there are no system-wide recognitions for July. But since we don't have any system-wide recognitions, I just want to take just a moment to brag on the district just for a minute. Last week, we talked about the new STEAM Center, and myself, Representative Green, Representative Jackson, I know had an opportunity to go last Friday and see the students graduate from the first camp that was held at the STEAM Center. And I want to say that I was impressed. And Dr. Lewis, of course, was there to represent the district as well. But I was impressed with the possibility of what the center can become. And I think you're going to see great things coming from the STEM Center and great partnerships as well. So I just want to brag one more time. We talked about it last week, but on Dr. Lewis for his vision, for seeing this through, and for the board members that participated. Thank you. I think Representative Green volunteered that.
What type of economic impact do you think we will have on the city? Now, for 2 days, right? Or 3 days? They come in on Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday, and it's Friday. They'll come in on Friday, the conference is Saturday, and then they'll probably lose Sunday.
So Friday night, Saturday. So for Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day impact, 300 people economically. What type of impact do you think that'll have on the city? That's
300 people.
300 people at $200 a hotel. Let's say $150 a hotel for the weekend rate. Even for the $100, 100 times, that's already 30,000. So we're talking about a $100,000 impact.
Right.
We talking about, cause you're talking about, but then you're talking about buying 3 meals a day and going to the mall, shopping. We talking about it could be a $100,000 impact for this city. So that's what the city like to do. That's what the city like to do. And that right there is going to say, because they say they didn't want to put fraternity stuff on there, but we ain't talking about it. We ain't trying to promote a white party. Didn't have to do that. We talking about an event that we want basically, we want the city of Columbus to sort of open their arms and welcome Kappa Alpha Psi members to the city of Columbus, because it's going to have a possibly over $100,000 impact economically on the city for what you know and
do we need
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right. Talk about what this event's all about, what it does. Talk about for the fraternity, and talk about the community. You know what?
I mean, I can't do nothing about that. That's good.
Servant leader in the community.
Is that better?
We just given away 2 scholarships. We just given away two scholarships. You don't say how what the amount, and I think overall within the last so many years we've been giving away over $10,000 in scholarships.
Okay.
In the last so many years, we give away over $10,000 in scholarship. And what we do is, as far as servant leadership, that we, give scholarships away. We have a mentoring group with our Kappa League. We mentor young men into being community and leaders and get them prepared for college, take them on trips to visit colleges. We send them to camp over the summer.
Right.
And David, whatever you can think of, throw it in the fire.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So, but right now we're trying to. One of our goals is trying to get the small chapter of the year award. That's why we're doing a lot of stuff. And then of course let's talk about the mentor. You are one of the advisors to the college, to Columbus State University, and you're taking